This is kind of a rehash of something I had said before. I was watching a video about Windows on ARM and how the Qualcomm laptops kind of flopped, because everybody kind of expected that. They were advertising themselves based on AI performance, and nobody knew what the fuck to use AI for. You know what I mean? Like, there's an enterprise use case for AI, but consumers don't really know the difference between running AI locally and running AI on the cloud, you know? Like, what can Copilot do that Grok can't do? You know what I mean? So the main problem had me thinking about Linux though, and it was because I watched Marcus Brownlee video on the Qualcomm Snapdragon Elite whatever laptops, when those came out, and I remember the only thing I really took away from that video was Marcus is he's a content creator, you know what I mean? He makes videos, and I had trouble with this. I had mentioned it before that in another video that there's this Linux daily challenge, a 30-day Linux challenge, but the people doing it are content creators. So they end up with uh, trying to bring their work into Linux, and you can't really do that. You can't bring a full-blown Adobe Premiere, After Effects, fucking whatever the fuck else you got going on, Photoshop and all this other shit. You can't bring that over to Linux. You're gonna have to relearn some stuff, and you're gonna have to pick and choose new software, and you're gonna have to relearn things. So what ended up happening is most of the Linux Daily Challenge people are like, well, I can't use my Adobe software, so until that changes, I can't switch to Linux. But there's like fucking I think somebody had estimated it. It's like 1% of Windows users have Adobe software on their computer. Besides like Acrobat, they have like something from the Adobe suite. But you have this perspective of being a content creator, and that was something that Qualcomm really fucked up on, was they had set up all these sponsorship deals with content creators to show off the laptop as they had it marketed as like impartial, which was also kind of a bad idea because people can see right through that shit, they'll be like, oh, you're obviously lying to us, I can tell because this is a sponsored video. So you have to be upfront about that, or else people will assume that you're being malicious. But the main thing was Marcus had made his video and he was talking about how some of his software hadn't been ported yet for content creation. And he said that the software compatibility because of that wasn't really usable for him, if I remember correctly. So people that may have potentially bought one of these laptops that maybe aren't content creators are being given this information that, oh, Marcus can't use this video because the software compatibility sucks. So I won't be able to use it because my software may not work, and how would I know? And that's something that Apple really understood was when they switched over. This happened first when they switched from PowerPC to Intel, right? And when Intel started kicking IBM's ass and they kind of dropped out of the market, at least for consumer CPUs, what had happened was Apple had to migrate all these software developers off of PowerPC and onto Intel. And so they give them a year or two or whatever to get all their shit ported. But one thing they learned from that was you need to have dedicated Apple staff ready to go to help people port their software to this new architecture. And when it came to switching to Apple Silicon back to ARM, what happened was they did the same thing and they dedicated a bunch of staff and they said, if you need help, we have the docs here, but if you need help, just call on us and we'll send somebody. We'll have somebody walk you through what you need to do to port your software to ARM, or what you need to do at least to ship software. And that was one thing that I had asked a few Microsoft developers, because Wendell from Level 1 Techs had made a video about why Windows for ARM wasn't doing too hot. And he said one of the problems was, well, their documentation is supposed to be pretty good and developers can follow it pretty easily. If you get stuck on something, it's really hard to get Microsoft support like to get somebody on staff at Microsoft to help you port your stuff to ARM. And because of that, a lot of the software vendors just haven't bothered, because everybody's still using x86 64. So you have this problem where you have all these software vendors that aren't reporting their software. So then the reviewers get the laptop and they're like, well, I can't use my software, so it's not really usable for me. I'm gonna stick with what works. And it kind of goes to show that Microsoft's goals are kind of ever shifting, and they don't really have it quite down pat yet what they need to do on these computers because they kind of marketed them for AI, but nobody really gives a shit about AI. What they care about is if their software still runs. And I have a feeling that if they had marketed it to like just an average user that just needs like Word and Outlook and stuff, they probably would have been fine. Like if they had a web browser, they'd probably be fine with these ARM laptops and Windows for ARM would probably work for them. But my first impression was that, oh, if I get Windows for ARM, I mean, I wouldn't use the Windows anyways, but uh, if I were to get one of these, like if you had like pointed a gun to my head and said, use Windows for ARM for the next few months or whatever, I might have to just take a fucking bullet because my first impression was, oh shit, none of my shit's gonna work. What am I gonna do? Half my shit on my computer ain't gonna fly on here. And that's kind of an important thing is when you're pushing these a new architecture especially, you really do need to have software vendors on board and ready to go, and you need to give them a few years to do it before you really make that push. So Apple understood this because they'd already done it before. Microsoft didn't really understand this, and because of that, they kind of ate, they kind of ate dirt. Because I don't really see NPUs as being super consumer AI friendly. Because like the thing is, what do you use an AI for locally? Like on your computer as a person. Obviously the people watching my channel, we probably fucking don't use AI for anything. I think I got it in my fucking search engine and that's about it. But if you were to actually use AI, or if your friend or family asked you to use AI, and it was something you could do on a program in Windows, it wasn't like just Copilot or whatever, like ask Grok if this is real. It'd be like if you're in MS Paint and you're trying to generate an image of a dog or something. This is an example I saw. Well, your local NPU actually isn't all that powerful compared to a cloud one. So you end up with running kind of a subpar AI. It doesn't really do the generation very well. It's not powerful enough, and you're left with kind of some bullshit. And you're like, why didn't I just use the cloud to do this? Why didn't I ask Grok if this was real, man? You know? And people didn't really understand what they were getting from a local AI. Maybe it's more private, but it is Microsoft, so how can you fucking guarantee that? But what do you do with a computer like this? Why are you buying a Windows for ARM computer? It's got better battery life. It's got some app support. But at this point, why are you buying a Windows tablet and not a iPad? Because the iPad far cheaper, still a tablet. You can still put a keyboard on it, and it's got software support because it's fucking iPad OS. They have all the software support in the world. Everybody's making fucking iPad apps. So why would you get a Windows computer that's got kind of subpar AI? You're basically, for most people, they're like, well, maybe if I'm web browsing I could use it, but why am I spending this much on a computer that I'm going to use for web browsing? Why wouldn't I get like a normal tablet that's far cheaper and has better compatibility? Because that's the thing is like I don't think people generally like Windows. I talk to a lot of gamers who are retarded in their own right, but a lot of them, even then, they don't say like, "Oh, I just heckin' love Microsoft and I want Microsoft to fucking suck my cock." Like, it's not really a general sentiment. Hating on Windows is the easy way out. So I talk about it enough. You've heard about me. You've heard me yap about this well enough by now. You've heard everybody yap about this well enough by now, but this is a Linux channel, so why the fuck am I talking about Windows? And the thing is, where was I even going with that? Oh yeah, it's even the most retarded gamer, they look at Windows for ARM and they'd be like, well, how do I run my fucking spyware games? You know, how do I run my proprietary software on this piece of shit? And it's like, oh, you can't. You can't do it because there's no the translation layer sucks or it doesn't work or whatever. And you know, you can't get your games running. So it's like, well, why am I buying this overpriced piece of shit laptop when I can go get a gaming laptop and have much better software compatibility? I don't have to worry about this shit, and I can just keep it plugged into a wall for all eternity. You know, and that's kind of the thing is it's really hard to convince gamers that Windows is like bad for them. You know, it's really easy to convince them that something that doesn't play video games is bad for them because you have this kind of opposite sentiment in the Linux community where whereas a Windows user will say I don't like Mac because I can't play my video games on it, a Linux user will say, you know, I don't like Windows, but I do like Mac, you know. And I never really liked that sentiment. You know, I don't really see why I would want a Mac for anything really. Linux does all my stuff, you know, it's better. It's better for what I do. But the thing is, I know I keep saying that a lot. Like, how do you convince somebody to buy a Windows for ARM laptop? You know, like what's the selling point there? And I think I went over the problems. You know, I think I went over kind of what its main selling point was because that's all I can fucking think of was they were like it's got better battery life, it's got an MPU in it, and it's like oh that's fucking cool. Why the fuck do I need that? You know. Well, that's kind of the whole deal. I don't know. I don't really have much more to say about that. All right, thanks.